todos, estamos aqui em mais um episódio do GN Highlights. Hoje nós vamos ter um tema extremamente desafiador e difícil para o nosso dia a dia, que é a neurorradiologia pediátrica, a imagem neonatal. E para isso nós temos aqui o Dr. Thierry Huisman, ele é chefe do serviço de radiologia do Texas e está aqui para a gente para conversar a respeito desse tema desafiador. Hi, Dr. Thierry, it's a pleasure to have you here.
Absolutely.
We're going to talk about pediatric neuroimaging, specifically in the neonatal period. I'd like to ask you, what are the main problems that we usually face in the neonatal imaging?
So there are many problems in the neonatal imaging. First of all, we are dealing with a very young, very vulnerable child, where the whole imaging has to be adapted to making it a very safe environment for the child, where we also have very specific and sensitive imaging. So not only do we have to take care that it's a safe environment, we also have to adapt our imaging to the developing immature brain. We have to acquire imaging in a very short time period, preventing the child from being in the scanner for extended time periods, which may result in undercooling of the child. And we have also, of course, very complex, very different imaging findings, because the pathology we're looking at is very different, and we have usually very limited information by the patient. You cannot ask a neonate, how are you doing? So we have to extract it from the indirect clinical findings.
Okay. And you know, the imaging is it's a challenge for us. What are the main circumstances that we are going to scan these kids, these neonates?
So depending, of course, on what we're looking at, if it's a child who has an hypoxic ischemic injury versus a child who has a malformation or maybe even a neonatal brain tumor, we have, of course, very different approaches to imaging. I think what is essential is that we know exactly what we're looking for, what we expect to see, that we also, for example, what we do in my institution, that we take advantage of a MR-compatible incubator, that the child is put in an MR-compatible incubator in the NICU, and then is being transported to the MR suite in a very safe environment. So if you have a child who needs more extended imaging, then of course we will take advantage of that. If it is quick screening, we can do it maybe just by a wrap and go.
Okay. Can you talk about something about the protocols, the use of contrast in these kids?
So everything is focused on being fast and specific. For that reason, typically our protocols start with a T1 weighted gradient echo sequence covering the entire brain, where we can reconstruct the multiplane axial coronal sagittal T1 weighted imaging. We always include a T2 weighted imaging, which is focused and adapted to the neonatal brain. And then we jump into diffusion weighted or diffusion tensor imaging. It gives very valuable information. MR spectroscopy is only added if there is suspicion for an inborn error of metabolism or maybe an hypoxic ischemic injury. Susceptibility weighted imaging is occasionally done when we're unsure about hemorrhaging. But I think the most important are the T2s and the T1 and diffusion. Contrast, we try to avoid contrast injection whenever possible. So it's a very rare occasion that we use contrast enhanced sequences.
Okay. Do you usually use special neonate coils for that?
So we use the smallest head coil possible for neonates. Typically, depending of course on your vendor, between a 64-channel neonatal head coil or maybe a less channel-rich head coil, but we do use the smallest head coil possible.
Okay. Dr. Thierry, my last question will be about hypoxic injury. What tips, what the radiologists really need to know and to assist the clinician? What are the main points that you will tell us?
I think hypoxic ischemic injury is extremely complex. Number one is, of course, that we diagnose it as early as possible. Now, we cannot image a child in the first hours in MR, so for that reason, I think we should not ignore head ultrasound. Head ultrasonography can give us very valuable information. This will help us to make the determination, can this child undergo a cooling, hypothermic treatment? I think that is number one. Then if we go to imaging, we should take care to do it as early as possible, not to run into the issue that we get into the pseudo-normalization time period. Okay. And then it is, we will do imaging as late as possible later, because the later you do imaging as follow-up, the better you can make a prediction about the prognosis.
Good, very good. Thank you, Dr.
You're welcome.
Thierry. Thank you to share your experience with us.
Absolutely.
É um prazer conversar com o Dr. Thierry. A imagem neonatal, sem dúvida nenhuma, é um desafio, não só na realização, mas também na interpretação dessas imagens. A Sociedade Paulista de Radiologia tem rotineiramente se esforçado para trazer o conhecimento atual e consistente em todas as áreas para dar suporte ao radiologista a fazer esse tipo de uma boa avaliação e uma boa prática da medicina. Obrigado.
Thank you.